For more on our top story of former President Trump expecting to be arrested on Tuesday, let's bring in today's political panel. With me today, Maura Gillespie, Bluestack Strategies founder and principal advisor to, former advisor to Speaker John Boehner and former advisor to Congressman Adam Kinzinger, and Katie McCutcheon, Vice President of House Strategies, and former Senator Joe Manchin, Deputy Communications Director. Sometimes I can't read English. Welcome to both of you. So the New York Times is saying that a surrender of former President Trump is unlikely on Tuesday. This is obviously a political town. Katie, how do you assess the politics of this?
Well, look, I think that Republicans are probably right that this is going to galvanize his base. But for Dems, I don't think they see this as political. You know, this is a legal issue. And in the United States, the law applies to everyone, including former presidents. So I think we're going to see if and when the DA charges Donald Trump, and then we're going to let the legal process play out.
Former Vice President Pence has been critical of his former boss on some things. In this case, he's saying it would be a politically charged prosecution. So for others who are interested in the Republican nomination, it's a bit of an awkward spot. How do you assess the impact on the 24 race?
I think it's going to have an impact, whether it's the political ramifications, as Katie mentioned, that will galvanize the GOP, or playing the victim. I mean, Donald Trump is going to play the victim, and I think he has the platform to do so in many ways. And if we're looking at this, it's important to remember that we don't have all the facts right now. A lot will be uncovered this week, but those charges better be egregious, because the public arrest of a former president of the United States has implications not just here in this country, but on the world stage that could impact us.
Great point. It's expected China's President Xi is going to be in Moscow for a few days this week. I interviewed National Security Council spokesman John Kirby today on Fox News Sunday. Let's play it.
There's no question that both China and Russia, and this is right out in the national security strategy, are two countries that are chafing against this international rules-based order that the United States and so many of our allies and partners have built up since the end of World War II. They'd like to rewrite the rules of the game globally, and they have been increasing their cooperation and their relationship, certainly of late.
Katie, what concerns should we have about a China-Russia alliance?
I mean, I think there are a lot of concerns, and I think it's pretty clear that an isolationist approach is not going to deter Russia from invading other countries other than Ukraine, and it's not going to deter China from invading Taiwan. I think Japanese leaders have said that the strongest way to prove to China not to move on Taiwan is to be strong on Russia.
Maura, what do you make of it? What should the U.S. do about it?
When there is a vacuum of leadership on the world stage, bad actors are waiting the wings to take our spot. And we're seeing that with China. You know, their peace dealings with Iran and Saudi Arabia wasn't for peace. It was for their own building of their alliance. And what they're doing in Russia is that. So for those who have said, and there's been some people who have said in the GOP that this is a land grab issue, it's not the case. Russia invaded a sovereign nation, and they had the right to defend themselves. And it's important that we maintain a position of solidarity with freedom-loving nations around the world to stay in a position of power and to stay as number one. Because what's happening in China and with their alliance building with Russia, that's a problem for us, and we need to take that seriously.
Okay, another hot topic is the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Here's Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina from today.
The regulators were asleep at the wheel. They had every tool they needed. You're going to hear the far left say exactly the opposite, but it's just completely false. The truth of the matter is they had every single tool. They had the bank on the radar, but they didn't do anything. It's a failure of the regulatory.
Katie, it sounds like there's some bipartisan concern about banking regulation and oversight.
Yeah, and I somewhat agree with Senator Scott here. You know, it seems like the Federal Reserve did have the tools and the ability to see all these red flags and had the authority to step in when they saw that the bank was becoming unstable. But I do just want to make the one point that, you know, the DEI and ESG investing policies is pretty standard throughout the whole banking industry. So if that were a reason why it would fail, then every bank with those similar policies would have also failed.
Okay. Maura, we are going to get hearings on Capitol Hill. You guys both worked on the Hill. You are familiar with your share of hearings. Do we get new legislation to address these issues?
I think there's a lot that needs to be uncovered. for both before, during, and after what happened, and why the FDIC has given them, why this bank has been decided as a systemic risk, right? I think people have a lot of questions as to why this bank, or, kind of why the East Coast, West Coast, elite are being bailed out. Plenty of questions to be answered there. But I think one thing I want to point out with SVB, it was a communications failure. Amongst other risk management failures and other failures across the board, it was a communications failure. And it's just a reminder, again, to banks, but companies across the country, that they need to have a plan in place to handle this crisis communications. It was just, it was terrible.
You expect any legislation?
I do. Hopefully it's after the investigation is done. I think any legislation right now is premature before we know exactly what happened.
Should we be worried about other banks?
Yes. I mean, when the government tells you, don't worry, we've got this covered, you should absolutely worry. So, yes, I would worry.
Maura Gillespie, Katie McCutcheon, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job.